want to show you a picture here, and you tell me what this is a picture of, where the guy came from. Anybody recognize that? Wizard of Oz. All right, all you movie junkies out there, you got that right on. And who is this character? The Cowardly Lion. You're doing great. And what did the Cowardly Lion want? Courage. Exactly. He wanted courage. And, you know, I won't retell the story, but he got his version of courage and what he thought it was in his life. The wizard handed out what he needed. You know, what do you think of when you think of courage? You might think of a lot of different things. You might think of that lion. I don't know. You might think of firefighters going into a burning building to save someone's life, and that certainly takes courage. You might think of soldiers on a battlefield that are preparing to face who knows what as they go and they help in that situation. You might think of policemen who go into a situation, hostage situation, whatever it might be, not quite sure what the outcome is going to be. And that is certainly courage. Those things reflect courage in people's lives. It takes courage to do those things. That's one aspect of courage. Some would look at courage and say, well, it takes courage to do some crazy things like bungee jumping. Has there anyone here been bungee jumping? Okay. We have one. All right. We have two. Do I see another hand? We just want to pray for you because you're crazy. No. No, that would take courage. You know, it's just boom, you know. Some people, I remember when I used to watch cliff diving. You ever seen all that? Down in Mexico where they'd get up there and they'd jump over that. That would take some measure of courage. Extreme skiing. Several years ago, I was in Utah and went up to the mountains there, and there's this helicopter there. It's going up across the top of the mountain. These guys jump out of the helicopter onto the ski slope and head down. And the reason they did the helicopter, there were no ski lifts up to where they were going. Now, we look at things like that, and we either call it courage or stupidity, one or the other. Well, whatever you think courage is, it is seen in different ways. And there are times in life that we need courage. Maybe not to rush into a burning building or go into a hostage situation or even to jump off a cliff. We don't need that kind of courage, but we need courage to live. We need courage to do what is right. And I don't know where you're at in your life today, but maybe you've been there, maybe you're there now, where there are things that you've looked at, things that you've faced, and you're scared to death to do it. Maybe it's having that hard conversation with that person that you need to bring out some things in their life, or maybe it's something you need to bring something out in your life, and it's scaring you to death to think about that conversation. Maybe it's facing a job situation that you just don't know what is going to happen. You're not sure quite which direction to go, and it's scaring you to death. Maybe it's just a relationship issue. There's all kinds of things, aren't there? You fill in the blanks. You understand what I'm talking about? You've been there. You've faced things in life where it is scaring you to death, and you knew it was going to take courage to go to that next level. Well, as we begin this year and as we look at this whole concept of next level, what is it that I need to do in my life to go to that next level? Today, I want to begin in the next 2 months, this mini-series within that theme is becoming and doing. There are things that we need to do, but really there are things that we need to become first in order to do the things that God might have for us. So I want you to think about becoming and doing. We're going to look at things in the weeks to come like humility and self-control and wisdom, and then some spiritual disciplines, fasting and prayer and solitude and study and all of those things. And I want you to have the courage to do something different. I want you to have the courage to go maybe where you've never gone before in your walk with God. So courage. Today, I want us to find out what it takes to help it grow. What does it take to get there? If we were to define courage as knowing the right thing to do and doing it, And then to measure courage by the time between understanding and doing, how much time gap would there be in your life? Let me give you a couple examples from the Scriptures. In Matthew chapter 4, earlier in Jesus' ministry, he's walking around, he's looking at people, and he's walking by the Sea of Galilee. He sees a couple of people there, and he calls them to follow him. Matthew chapter 4, here's what happens. Going on from there, he, that's being Jesus, saw two other brothers, James the son of Zebedee and his brother John. And they were in a boat with their father Zebedee preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed them. Did you catch the word there? Immediately. How much time would it take some courage to leave your life to follow someone? Yeah. They were fishermen. Their dad was fishermen. They were bound to be fishermen. That's all that it was ever going to be in their life. And Jesus comes along and says, hey, come follow me. And if they were to measure that courage by the time between, it was immediate. It was a courageous thing to do. There's another example in the Old Testament, the book of Daniel, the man Daniel. What do you usually think of when you hear Daniel? Lion's den. That's the story of Daniel. He's in the lion's den. But it's actually what happened before the lion's den that took courage. Because 120 guys had been appointed by the king to rule over the countryside, and 119 of them got jealous of one guy, Daniel, because Daniel was so upright and good. The king even saw it, and they became jealous and said, we got to get rid of this guy. And he was so full of integrity that the only way they knew they could do anything against him, they said, we've got to find something that has to do with the law of his God. If we can catch him in something in his faith, then that's what will get him on. So they went to the king and they said, oh, king, you're such a great guy. We think that no one should pray to anybody except you for the next 30 days. And the king says, you know what? You're right. I am a great guy. I'll sign it. And he signed this law that anybody that would pray to anyone else would be thrown into the lion's den. And in Daniel chapter 6, here's what happens. Verse 10. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows were open towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Daniel knew what was right, and he did it without hesitation. That's courage. So if courage is knowing the right thing and doing it, and they measured courage by the time between understanding that and doing it, here's the scary question. If there was a time log that kept that in my life, how much time would be logged? Have there been things that I've known that are right and I've not done them? Yes. Have there been things that have been tough that I've avoided doing? Yes. And today I just want us all to admit that we need courage. We need courage to do the right thing at the right time. We'll share 4 quick things with you. Number 1 is this. Courage comes by standing up for the right thing, even when others oppose you. You ever been there? You're in a situation that you know what's right and everybody else is just, going the other direction and they're having a good old time and you're thinking, man, this isn't right. I know I shouldn't do this, or I should stand up. I should say something. And it's scary. No matter if you're a kid at school on the playground or you're an adult, it's scary. There was a situation in the New Testament where there were 2 guys, Peter and John, early in the church. They had healed a lame man. And word got out because the lame man just jumped up and went through town yelling and screaming. Everybody said, hey, isn't that the dude that we've seen lay all of his life by the temple? And they said, yeah, that's him. And they became very popular. Chapter 4 of the book of Acts, Peter and John go to the temple. They start teaching and preaching. about the resurrection of Jesus, and the religious leaders get together and say, man, we've got to put a stop to this because they are causing a mess and they're teaching about resurrection of Jesus. We just killed this guy, and he's going out saying he's still alive, that he came back from the dead. So they went and they arrested Peter and John, and they confronted him. Did you heal this guy? And they said, yeah, we healed him. What do you mean, did we heal him? Didn't you see him running around outside? Yeah, we healed him. And said, well, what's this message? Well, we're preaching all that we've seen and heard. We can't help but tell you what we've seen and heard. And the religious leaders, they're just frustrated. And they don't really know what to do. And they talk about it. And they say to them, guys, look, we don't want you to do anything else. Verse 13 in Acts 4 says this, and when they saw the courage of Peter and John, and realized they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished and took note that these men had been with Jesus. There was something about Peter and John and what they said and how they said it and when they said it that these guys who opposed them, didn't like them, would really rather just had them dead or stay in jail. They could not deny that there was something different because these guys said what was right and true. We need that in our own lives. And courage comes by standing up. It's an amazing thing that when you stand up for things and they turn out okay, what does it do? It strengthens you just a little bit more. And courage comes when we have the courage to do what's right in whatever situations we may find ourselves. Second thing about courage is this. Courage comes when we trust what God says. You ever sing that song as a kid? The B-I-B-L-E? Yes, that's the book for me. I stand alone on the Word of God. The B-I-B-L-E. Pretty simple, basic song. But oh, it's so rich. There's one chapter in the Bible that talks more about courage or uses the word courageous more than any other. It comes from the book of Joshua. Chapter 1, here's the situation. The children of Israel are led up to the promised land. They're standing on the banks of the Jordan River, and Moses has died. And God looks at Joshua and said, all right, Joshua, you're the man. Take him across. I don't know about you, but would you be intimidated? Would you be kind of, what? You want me to do what? In Joshua chapter 1, Moses is gone. God looks at Joshua and says, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to let you lead the people into the promised land. You're going to go across the river. Every place your foot steps is going to be your ground. You're going to own it all, and no one's going to be able to stand against you. And then in verse 5 he says, as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Verse 6, be strong and courageous because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it from the right nor the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Do not let the book of this law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything that's written in it. Then you'll be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And Joshua had to decide, am I going to trust what he's told me, or am I going to do it my way? He said, look, you got to obey my word. You got to hang in there. You got to keep it. You got to meditate on it. You got to keep my word close to you. That's why it's so important to read the word. In the bottom of your, or the back of your bulletin, somewhere in the bulletin, there's a reading schedule this week, and it's a challenge for you. Read these passages. You want to find out more about courage. What is it that God would have you to hear and understand? You want to have courage. Trust in what He says, because what He says is true. The third thing, courage comes through the support of fellow believers. That's so important. I honestly don't think we realize how important that is a lot of times. The encouragement of one another. Here's my next level challenge for you this week. I've been doing that to go a little bit deeper into the Word on your own, to do a study on your own. Look up the word or the phrase, one another. One another in the New Testament. And you'll be amazed how many times that occurs as Paul is encouraging us to encourage one another, pray for one another, lift up one another, be there for one another, hold one another accountable. Never take for granted the fellowship of the church. Never take for granted the power of coming together as a corporate body of Christ. It's not all there is in our relationship to God, but it is, I believe, a very important. There's just something about being together with God's people. And there's 100 and almost 200 people here in this room this morning. And I realize that not everybody's going to get to know each other on a close space. But I'd encourage you, one, to get in a Bible school class during the 11 o'clock hour if you attend this hour, or you can go to the 9 o'clock hour. We have 2 classes going on right now, and go to the 11 o'clock hour for worship, or get into a small group. And actually, whether you realize it or not, you're all in small groups here right now. Because look around you, and you'll notice that the people you sit with this week, they will be about the same people you sit with next week. Because you're all creatures of habit, and there are groups of people within this auditorium, because I encourage you to get to know the people that just sit around you. And when you notice they're gone, I hope you've gotten their phone number and you can call and say, hey, I missed this Sunday. Is there something, can I help you out? Is something going on? That fellowship is so important. The Apostle Paul is in the end of the book of Acts, and there's a lot of stories in the book of Acts, but this is not one you've probably ever heard a sermon on. But at the end of the book of Acts, Paul is headed to Rome. He's going to Rome because his life is being threatened, and he's appealed to Caesar. There are Christians in Rome. Paul had never been to Rome. Paul did not start the church in Rome. It was new territory for him. But there were Christians there. And on his way, in Acts 28, verses 14 and 15, listen to what happens. There we found some brothers who invited us to spend a week with them. And so we came to Rome. And the brothers there had heard that we were coming. And they traveled as far as the Forum of Appius and the 3 taverns to meet us. When Paul saw him, he thanked God and took courage. He's going to a scary situation. He's facing something he's never faced before. And just because there were some believers there that shared with him the story and the death and the resurrection and the burial and the promises of God, it encouraged him. And he took courage. Let others be there for you. As strange as it sounds, some of us are scared to get to know other people. But there's something about sharing a need and saying, hey, I need your prayers on this. Or there's something about knowing that someone's gone through a situation, a death of a child, a death of a spouse, a death of a parent. That there are people right here that have been there. Every one of those situations I just mentioned. And you share a common bond in Jesus Christ. And let that give you courage to go on. And the strength you receive from others. It's the final thing. Courage comes by doing the right thing and not letting fear intimidate you or hold you back. There's a parable in the New Testament of a landowner, wealthy landowner, and he had to leave town for a while, and he wanted his possessions to be taken care of, and he called 3 of his servants up and says, here you go, gang. I'm going to divide up what I have, and I want you to take care of it and use it wisely, and when I come back, I'll come to see how you've done with what I've given you. And to one guy who's pretty talented, a multitasker, he gave him 5 talents. And those talents, some think are money, others think are responsibilities, whatever they might be. He gave him 5. And the guy took them, said, all right, thanks. And they brought in another guy, and he took 2. And the guy said, thanks. And then he gave the guy 1. Now, the landowner really don't think it was that. I just think he recognized who had certain gifts and who didn't have as many. And he said, but they're all gifted. I'm entrusting them with something. So the landowner goes away, and quite a while later he comes back and he brings in the servant with the 5 and said, well, how'd you do with what I gave you? And he said, oh, I earned 5 more, and gave them back to him. And he said, well done. And the other guy had 2. He said, well, here's the 2 you gave me, and here's 2 more. And the landowner says, well done. And then in verse 24, this happened. Then the man who had received 1 talent came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and hid your talent in the ground. See? Imagine him brushing off the dirt, shaking it free. See, here's what belongs to you. And the landowner was not pleased, because he didn't even try to do anything with what he had been given, because he was afraid of that. Courage comes by doing the right thing and not letting fear and intimidation hold us back. Is that a scary thing? Yes. But sometimes it's even in the little things it can make a big difference. Daniel made the decision to pray. And when he got in the lion's den, I don't think he was scared at all. Because small decisions make a big difference when you're in the lion's den. I'll share something about my own life. I don't say this at all to say I've got it all figured out, but I remember when I was in high school, I think I was a sophomore in high school because I didn't have my driver's license yet. I remember riding my bicycle up to a hamburger joint close to where I lived, and they had a help wanted sign in the window there, and I decided, I'm going to go apply for a job, get some money to, buy all the important things that you need when you're a teenager. And I went in and filled out the application, and the manager came out and he looked at the application and went through it all and asked me all these questions, and then he said, okay, you're hired, when do you want to start? And I said, well, what's my schedule? And he said, well, right now we're going to start you on Sunday nights. You'll have to work every Sunday night. Now, the church I was at, my youth group was on Sunday nights. That's when we had our youth program and things. And I remember saying, no, I can't do that. Why? Because I wanted to be at church. I was one of those weird kids, I guess. I wanted to be at church. I wanted to be with my friends. I wanted to go to youth group. And I remember getting on that bicycle and riding back home, not sad, not frustrated, like, wow, I blew that. No, I remember, be it wrong or right, I was proud of myself that I had made the right decision. And I turned down that job, and I kept going to youth group. And God knows the big picture, and I'm not saying that was the only thing that influenced me in my life. But I wonder where I'd have been if I would have taken that job and said, yeah, it really doesn't matter that I'm there. Or could it be that those times with that group in that situation molded me and shaped me, and here I am today? Don't know. But I know that small decisions make a big difference in life. And I don't know where you're at in your life. And I don't know what it is that you're facing. And I don't know what it is that you need the courage to do or say or go or whatever it might be. But I do know that our God would not let us down. And in the end, We'll be glad that we had the courage to do the right thing at the right time with a zero gap in what He's called us to do. Be strong and courageous. That's what God wants for you right now. Let's pray.